Hello, everybody. Welcome to Scribe Academy. This is our first session of this webinar series, Clerking in Action, or CIA. So my name is John Fagan, and I'm the CEO of Scribe, and we provide purpose-built software for managing town and parish councils, and we also have exceptional customer support. So as many of you know, the role of clerk and RFO can sometimes be quite challenging. It can be quite stressful. You can feel isolated. And that's exactly why we are hosting this new series. It actually started, the idea came from Sally Ferguson, who'll be talking today. And she felt like, there's kind of a lot of maybe negativity, and let's get our mojo back. Let's share a bit more positivity about the role of being a clerk. So today, we're delighted to have 3 speakers for our first event. We're going to be having Miriam Edwards. She's the clerk at Hurstbourne Tarrant Parish Council. And we're going to have 2 Sallys today. Sally Diaz, a clerk at Churchill Parish Council, and Sally Ferguson, a clerk at Lympsham Parish Council. So, Mims, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. And I will apologise in advance if anyone can hear my 2 dogs snoring underneath the table. They are quite loud this morning. So
yeah, we like snoring dogs. And also got to really say, it's kudos to Sally and Mims for speaking today. They're nervous. They haven't done, I don't know actually their experience of doing it, but this is something we're new. They're doing it with us, so really appreciate that. So it's new to us. So over to you, Mims.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to, John showed me how to share my PowerPoint, so I just need to do that first. Bear with me, I'm very old. Share. Lovely. Okay, so sorry, old technophobe here. But thank you for listening to me. And I'm the clerk and the RFO for the small rural parish of Hurstbourne Tarrant, which is nestled in the northwest corner of Hampshire, near to the Berkshire border, in an area of outstanding natural beauty. And much of the parish is actually in the conservation area as well. Our precept has been just over 15,000 since I started clerking in November 2017. And that was a job I took on after a 30-year career in the police. So next slide is, hang on. Now I can't see you guys.
It doesn't matter. Don't worry about seeing us. Just go to your PowerPoint and then click on your next slide. Yeah, so don't worry about us. Yeah.
How's that?
Perfect.
You can see that?
We can.
That's me 30 years ago. Well, actually, it's not. It's 35 years ago, 1988. Now, you would think clerking was a world away from policing, but actually it isn't. It's certainly not that different from rural policing, which I'd done in the 1990s. I'd attended parish council meetings as a local beat officer, and to be totally honest, was always desperate to give my police report and be excused by the chairman and not have to suffer the conversations about hedges. Next slide is me on my beat bike trying to get away from a parish council meeting. The interim years clearly dealt me a pair of rose-tinted spectacles, because somehow I managed to forget all that when my husband came home one day from a parish council meeting where they'd been discussing our village floods and announced that he'd found me the perfect little part-time job for when I retired. We'd lived in the area for the best part of 20 years and in the parish itself for 5. And in many ways, clerking for a small rural parish isn't that far off the rural policing career that I'd had, dealing with hedges, speeding, noise, and of course, the clear and present danger of the vexatious complainer. But having trained as a secretary when I'd left school, the admin side of the job was, and still is, I guess, the doddle. What was more difficult for me was the financial side of things, something which I'd never done before, other than run a tea fund and a sweetie cabinet in various police stations. So it was really all quite new to me. As soon as the outgoing clerk had fully retired after being retained for a few months to help me get to grips with things, I swooped in to bring the working practices into the 21st century. No more could I face cheques. Even 6 years ago, who was still using cheques? Despite some of the horror stories from other clerks about parish council banking, Lloyds were and continue to be really helpful. And I got the financial regs changed, and internet banking was born in the Bourne Valley. I'm going to show you a nice picture of the Bourne Valley. I was uncomfortable with raising my own payroll and also struggled with the HMRC online portal. Excel hated me as much as I hated Excel. So I put together a business plan on the back of switching to online banking to use a payroll provider who was a local business in the village and an accounting system. I had met Eleanor Green, an auditor well known to our Scribe colleagues, at my local ALC on training courses. My council engaged her as the internal auditor, and with her support and that of my chairman, who runs his own small business, so understands the need for accounting software, we were off, and I haven't looked back. Even though we probably have only around 150 transactions a year, the readability of reports means that it's easier for councillors to actually understand the accounts, and it's been useful for raising allotment rental invoices as well. But the greatest bonus is that me and Excel are well and truly unfriended until stage 2 of my clerking career. This year I was approached by our neighbouring parish councillor Vernon Dean to ask if I would take over from their retiring clerk. The parish is much smaller and even more rural in nature, only raising a £10,000 precept. Both councils share a village. The parish boundary cuts the village in half, and we share a defibrillator in a red phone box. So it made sense to take it on, especially as they only meet every other month. Looking at their working practices was a bit of an eye-opener. They still used cheques and had no online banking. The clerk still waited for the monthly statement to arrive to check that all was as it should be. There was no cloud storage of reports, and I don't want to relive my introduction to the filing cabinet, which contained bank statements and accounts dating back to 1999. Filing wasn't an appropriate adjective for what I found in those 4 drawers. Their budgeting wasn't based on cost centres or codes and bore no resemblance to the precept raised. This felt like a proper project. I faced no opposition when presenting the councillors with my list of demands and more professionally entitled needs. And although they have even fewer transactions than Hurstbourne Tarrant, for both transparency, professionalism, and to bring them well and truly into the 21st century, I have now adopted Scribe for their accounts too. I'm only in my first month clerking for them, but already I'm getting positive feedback from councillors about the way things are being done. One thing I'm perversely looking forward to already is next year's year end. Probably one of the main things to make my hair look even more unwieldy than it does on a normal day was getting Vernon Dean's books to balance for 2022-23. The inherited Excel spreadsheet had worked its magic even before we'd been introduced, and I couldn't fathom the error without the, yes, you've guessed it, the paper bank statement, which wasn't due until probably about now. So between online banking and Scribe, 2023-24 should be a breeze. I probably don't need to sell Scribe to you all because you're already here. If it's this useful to small parishes as mine, I can only begin to imagine how much time and effort it saves larger councils. The time I saved in Hurstbourne Tarrant by not having to battle Excel spreadsheets and the dreaded calculator meant I was able to take on another parish. And once I've sorted out the antiquated chaos which still exists there, I think it'll be a doddle to run. Between Eleanor and I, we have also recently supported an adjoining parish in the opposite direction, whose previous clerk had caused the council a lot of headaches and heartaches. Eleanor advised the new clerk to chat to me about Scribe, and no surprises here, that council is now on Scribe too. And Max Owen is here with us today. Hi, Max. We liaise often over a cuppa, and the conversation always involves Scribe, only something which you guys will understand and not consider totally and utterly crackers.
Mim, just to double check, you're still on the slide 4. I'm not sure if you're looking to move, but
oh, I will. Yes. Oh, there's Vernon Dean. Lovely, lovely. So my last one is For me, Scribe saves me time, earns me more money by being able to do more clerking, and has made me new clerky friends and reduced my gin consumption very slightly. And I get time to spend more time with my rescue French bulldogs and my Shetland ponies. Sadly, the one thing I'm not confident it will do is sort out my hair, but at least today it's not pink. And that's me done.
Excellent, thanks, Mims. So we're going to do Q&A at the end. So we're going to have each speaker. So if you want to unshare your slides there, Mims, that's really appreciated. I didn't expect so many mentions of Scribe. Appreciate that. So we're going to go over to Sally Diaz, but before that, we're going to run a poll. Right, what am I doing? Oh yes, here we go. So yeah, what are your primary challenges when working with counsellors? So obviously a very important part of your role is working closely with your counsellors. What are your challenges related to that? So Sally's interested in that. So fill that out. Even if you're a counsellor yourself and you're on the webinar, you'll have to work with your fellow counsellors. So feel free to fill that out as well. And we'll get it up to 90%. Yeah, it was interesting hearing your background there, Mims, about coming from the police force and the kind of similarities in the roles, let's say.
It definitely is. In fact, I think it was something that kind of, well, obviously my husband probably thought, yeah, she can do that. And it was, something that kind of appealed to me as well.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. And you're giving back now to the community. Okay, yes. So I'm going to end that poll. The key challenges are, it's actually, limited availability due to other commitments. So when working with your counsellors, yes, because there is a volunteer role, as we know. And then I'll share the results actually there for you all to see. And then second, which is kind of related to the first one, actually, is timely and effective communication. So not always getting the response back as you wish, and then maybe inconsistency in following up through actions. So we're going to go over to Sally Diaz. Are you ready, Sally?
I am indeed. Good morning, everybody. My name is Sally Diaz. I have been a clerk now. Coming up to 6 years in June is when I moved into the clerking world. And my background previously, I had worked within hospitality. I worked as a holiday rep abroad in my 20s. I've worked in education. I've worked in recruitment. I've worked in various different sectors. And when somebody recommended applying for a post, I was looking for a change. I only envisaged Hugo from the Vicar of Dibley and thought of, obviously, the brigade of counsellors that you see on the Vicar of Dibley with David Horton and Jim and the topics that were discussed. So to be honest, it wasn't the most exciting role I ever thought would be possible. But I have to say, for me, 6 years in this year, it's been the best job I've ever had. Now, every day has been a challenge, and every day is a new learning curve, and you're constantly learning, and you do lots of repetitive things, but you also learn lots of new things, and there's constant sort of development and growth. And I wanted, when I was asked to sort of talk about our role as a clerk, as I said, I have openly said this to my counsellors, that I think that it's the best for me, it's the best job in the world, and you can only speak as you find. I've worked for several different parish councils, and I think you have to make the parish council fit for you. So initially, I just wanted to make a comment regarding new clerks coming into the world, and there's lots of horror stories that we see from clerks undergoing all sorts of difficulties in their councils and trying to get things working properly. And I think the fact that we have opportunities like the Scribe, training sessions is fantastic because you can talk. But also for new clerks, I think it's really important that if I was going to make any recommendations for myself, I was really lucky to have a mentor. And if there's somebody that you can buddy up with, or the clerk in your neighbouring parish, somebody that you know that you could actually go back to, because it can be quite an isolated job and you feel like you are the only person working in your office, in your spare room at home, or at your kitchen table, wherever you work, or even if you are in the parish office. So trying to liaise with as many other clerks as you can, attend local groups, if you have little local cluster groups where you meet up and you discuss things, and just being able to talk things through, I think is really important and helps with that isolation. That is the only drawback I think that this job has. Also, being able to speak on the forums that we have is fantastic, because somebody has done something somewhere before, so you can usually find documents, information and guidance. And as I said, attend as many of your local council association meetings as well, to be able to get updates and start making those networks and connections. It's really important to be able to have as many resources at your fingertips so that you can use that for future reference. And I would also say that it would be important to add that your councillors are the best source of knowledge. For many of them, they've lived in the parish for years, or they've lived locally. If you have a ranger, if you have some people call it a lengthsman, anybody that's worked within the council, or perhaps as a committee member at the village hall, that you can access information to. Don't feel that you have to be the oracle in the Bible on everything. There are people around you that you can go to and ask. And the fact that you're asking for their help, I've only ever found in my own experience that it has been really, really
You know what
helpful.
they remind me of? Well, you used to have a grocery box off Ron Taylor.
1 second, let me try and...
Oh, hang on, I'm not on mute. Hang on, sorry.
No worries, Jake. So good. Go on mute. Okay, we're back.
So I think it is just important to use all the resources that you can to be able to help, and just not feel that there are other people out there that you can go to. And as I said, I think it's the best job in the world. When I started, I actually have 2 parish councils. I work for Puriton as well as Churchill. Puriton was my first, and I'll be there until I'm probably about 85 if they'll keep me, because I love them. It's a fantastic parish. They're great parish councillors, really sort of proactive and trying to move things forward. And they've been a superb group of councillors to work alongside. And I also worked alongside a couple of other smaller part-time parishes until I found Churchill, and I was looking for more of a challenge, of something that to get my teeth into a little bit more. And my first parish council meeting that I took over, we have lots of assets to look after, but my first parish council meeting that I took over, 2 councillors walked out and resigned there and then within the first 25 minutes of the meeting. So it just sort of starts to show why I thought this would be, perhaps it may be of use to some of you, but to talk about perhaps having a divided council. And this is where my short but hopefully concise experience will be able to be shared with you. So I'm just going to share my screen. It was very evident from a very, very, very quickly that in fact, sorry, there we go, that my council were quite divided. From that first meeting, we had a clash of 2 sides, both thinking very, very differently about what they wanted to achieve. Some councillors working hard on different projects and others just not seeing the same vision. And as I said, 2 walked out there and then. They've been on the council for quite a long period of time. And that was the start of my education into Churchill. And so there was a definite divide with how their approach was, what they were looking for. And I felt that it was important to start thinking about how to bring this group of people together. And we had 13 councillors. Well, we went down to 11, obviously, after the first meeting, which just got me thinking, okay, how do we start getting this group of people that have all got amazing skills to be able to bring their qualities into the council and work more cohesively? So The first thing that I started to do when I joined the council was I just wanted to get to know each of them and find out what they were really passionate about, what they felt most interested in, and why they joined the council, and also what sort of obstacles they found working within the council. So I went about a bit of a fact-finding mission, set up a council WhatsApp group as well for some of those that were definitely restrictive perhaps with the technology side of things, that didn't necessarily go into email, and managed to be able to get WhatsApp set up on their phones. And we had like quite a nice quick response group, so that it just started to pull them together, which seemed to work, which was, you know, it was successful. And what I wanted them to be aware of, from my opinion, is there was this really, really active council that were all doing so much for a village that was being bombarded with developments and issues that were being brought upon them by the district council, that actually what they do and the time that they spend, and for many, they spend hours and hours and hours on the parish council, just to make them feel that actually I was really grateful for all of their help, because they helped me do my job. They did, and they still do, such a lot that between us, we covered an awful lot. And from other clerks that I'd spoken to that sort of said, you know, many parish councillors weren't as active, I felt that I had some fantastic people to work with, and I just wanted them to realise how grateful I was. And we started building our relationships, but there was still a divide within the group. So we decided, there was lots of talk about different projects and how we wanted to move things forward, and so we decided that, well, I initiated an informal brainstorming session where we got the councillors together. It was not on a parish council night. We used our local community room and set up sort of, we brought some drinks, bought some snacks, lots of flip chart paper, and started to separate the group up to be able to, their strengths, what they were interested in, and started to talk about what things we wanted to do with the parish. I found that while I was obviously getting to know each of the councillors, that there are natural alliances between people. They may have known people previously, and so when they get into the council, there's a natural sort of merging together. And I really wanted to try and get everyone to just mix themselves up and perhaps speak to other councillors that they hadn't spoken to. So we had this little group, we split them up into different sections. They all started sharing their ideas, creating mind maps of things that they'd like to do. And we then went back to the flip chart paper, almost like going back to school as such, and started to look at our focus and what we felt was important. And for this, the councillors started liaising and mixing a little bit more that they wouldn't normally have done. Obviously, it depends on many sort of groups within the parish, that they keep sort of working together. And we sent them away with sort of, okay, well, as we've got quite a few things here we're looking at, maybe can you three go away and perhaps look at this, and then what we'll do is in a month or 6 weeks time we'll meet back up and you can share your findings, and it'll be out of the parish council time frame, so we've got a lot more flexibility with how long we can discuss things, and let's delve into this a little bit more. And it tended to work, because they went away, they met up with each other, they started talking to each other a little bit more, and the cohesion started to form, which was really nice to see, and to see them in action. And that was the sort of line that we started working with. And the councillors started to relax a lot more as we were going into sort of parish council meetings. You know, everybody was just starting to feel a little bit more relaxed and happier to sort of speak to each other. So that was the start of trying to unify my councillors in particular. We sort of highlighted, once we came back again for our second brainstorming session, we highlighted the things that were most important to everybody. But I also wanted to draw in the skills from the councillors that actually had such a lot of knowledge from what they brought in from their outside environments and how they could help. Some people were fantastic on opportunities for being able to draw finance, to be able to look at if we were going to perhaps look at borrowing. Other people came from a planning background, management. We've got an architect on our parish council. So there were so many things that we could draw together, and by bringing them back in and forming them in their groups and just highlighting everything that they did, I again wanted to affirm how grateful we were that we had all of this free skill in front of us, if you like, because as we know, they do it for free. Counsellors work for free. So we started forming our little groups and the information, and that's where we started to come to. And the counsellors then went away and worked in their groups and actually initiated their own plans of what they were doing. It was very less led by me trying to get people to sort of come up together. And we had a new counsellor, and I asked them to buddy up with one of the more established counsellors. So again, they started to share their information, which was really useful. And then we started to look, I thought, okay, we'll try this a little bit more. And where they'd been in their particular committee groups, we sort of swapped them around so that they were in different committee groups, so that, again, they saw what was taking place on the other committees. And it just made everybody more free flowing, so that they were happy to go everywhere within the council rather than keep into their particular niches. So from my point of view, all of these little factors worked. You know, some things didn't work, like trying to approach into the world of technology. I had one particular counsellor that is no longer on the council said, I don't want a parish council email. Why do I have to have a parish council email? So again, we explained, as we do, that the importance of keeping them safe, keeping the council safe, that if we were to have a freedom of information request, it's more professional. He really didn't feel the need for it. He didn't stay with us for very long because it just wasn't the way he wanted to move. However, I found that for another parish councillor who really struggled with emails, I would just give him a sort of weekly call if there was something I needed to update him with, or I'd give him a text if something happened, because he would operate with his phone, but was no good with technology whatsoever. So small factors to just sort of try and help it. Again, I'm still very much aware councillors are volunteers. These councillors work really hard for their parish. If I can do little things to help them, then that's what I did. And in return, they really linked back in with the group. So the main points that I would just like to say from my point of view that worked, by mixing everybody up and doing some informal sessions to make everybody get together, really worked for me. We also have had 2 Christmas dinners where we have got together and gone out. Everybody's had a really lovely time. It's a really enjoyable evening. And just generally, everybody relaxes an awful lot more. Our council meetings are quite fun. They all say that they feel that it's not stuffy as it used to be. It's not very rigid, but everybody sort of has a laugh and a giggle and can just be themselves a little bit more, which has made them then open up and be more susceptible to new ideas, which has just been really fantastic. And obviously for those that you can't change or unify, they'll move on. And that's all we can do. But hopefully, if anybody else has got any other things that they can share, I would be really welcome, because this is what worked for me. And if there is anything that any of those points that may help you, or if you're a new clerk, try them, because they were really welcome to try and learning and having a different approach with obviously the rest of the councillors that were on the council, and it worked for us.
Awesome, Sally. That's really good advice there. I mean, 2 great topics so far from Mims and Sally. And those tips there from you, Sally, I mean, that applies to any company. But that taking people in, sometimes just taking people out of like the more formal environment, put it into informal environment, feel a lot more comfortable, ideas flow. It's really good. Okay, so we're going to do Q&A at the end. So we're final speaker is Sally Ferguson. We've got a poll running there. I've just shared it with you. So what do you love about working for your local council? Why do you do it? We've heard from Mims and Sally there. It's amazing all those jobs you've had, Sally, and this is your best job ever. It's so good to hear. So good to hear. It's almost like thinking, I'm going to quit my job. I want to become a clerk. It's really good to hear all that positivity. So we're going to get up to 80% respondents on that. Good. Almost there. There we go. I'll stop it. So that 80, I'll just stop that there now and end that and share that with you. So the number one, 60% of people said supporting the local community. And in second place, overseeing local projects, initiatives, actually making a difference on the community. And then managing, a lot of here like managing the finances and budgets. So we've got a lot of number geeks out there. So I'll stop that at sharing that, and I'll hand over to you, Sally Ferguson.
Hello everybody, my name's Sally Ferguson, and I've been a clerk since September 2018 to my home community in Lympsham, which is a small village in between Weston-super-Mare and Burnham-on-Sea in Somerset. And I also have a second tiny little hamlet over the border in North Somerset, which is called Loxton. And for experience, I did do 12 months as an assistant town clerk with North Heatherton Town Council, which was really, really interesting. I'm here today, thank you to everyone for inviting me, to talk to you about the little bit of the success I've had with grants and achieving grants and why they're so important. Now, to give you a little bit of the history of our community, we are a small community, but we are due to increase in about 2 years' time by about 25%. So when I came, when I saw the job come up as parish clerk, although I'd never worked in local authorities before, I'd have a lot of experience with administration from my time working for Sainsbury's. And then since 2007, I've had a lot of experience managing people. I was going to say difficult people there, but not all of them are difficult, through working as a livery yard manager with 28 horses and all the ladies and gentlemen that come with them. So I have got a little bit of experience in dealing with people, and I like to think that I'm a good people person. But the thing that I really wanted to get across to you today was how we need to have this positivity, because it's been a really difficult few years for all of us. And coming out the other side after the pandemic, there's a general apathy. You may find it yourselves in your councils, and a lack of volunteers now. And I don't mean volunteers to become parish councillors, because I take on the point somebody made on the chat that once they become elected or co-opted, they are a public servant. But we have in our small community a lot of litter picking groups, you know, people to help around the Churchill, that sort of thing. And they've all just disappeared because everyone's feeling negative. And so being positive and being maybe for my community, because it is small, a bit of a figurehead for people to come to. We've been able to develop a lot of things since COVID, and it's a really, really positive feel in the village at the moment. Now, when I've joined, the precept was 14,600. It was nothing. And the reason that the precept had been set that low, even though they had a play area to look after, and there's also we look after we're custodian trustees of the Manor Hall, which I'll come to in a little bit. The councillors had all been on the council for donkey's years, apart from a couple. They're all of an older age, and they all thought that the whole thing about being a parish councillor was not increasing the precept. I'm sure a lot of you have come across that. And so they were frightened that they were going to get feedback from residents in a negative way if all of a sudden they increased their precept. And as we know, those of us with smaller precepts, if you increase it by a few thousand, it's going to look like a massive percentage. So we had to work, I had to really work hard on getting them to sort of think positively. And where we started before I came to applying for grants was really getting them to understand the budget process, getting them to, as Sally Diaz just mentioned, getting them to understand that, you know, we have to work together, we have to identify things that we want to improve in the community before we can move forward. So the precept this year, I'm happy to say, has been increasing each year, and this year we've just set it at 26,000, which is more in line. And even though it was 20,000 last year, they still managed to overspend a bit. But we need to build those reserves, and we need to carry on developing the community with all the new housing that's coming in. So I first started looking at grants after completing my CiLCA in the first lockdown in 2020. That there was a project on that, and that really caught my eye. And I thought, maybe I could have a go at this. So Since then, since 2020, just to fill you in, the success I've had, because I'm still amazed by it. And if I can do it, anybody can. See, I couldn't even put together a slideshow for you today because I'm not that sort of technical person. I should have asked Sally Diaz to help me because she's helped me a lot in the past with things like that. But, you know, if I take you over to where I'm sitting now, is overlooking the cricket pitch. So in the right hand side of my view, I've got the sports pavilion, which was gifted to the village in 1991, when my little row of 20 houses was built. And then to the left hand side, we've got our play area, which is part of our control, under our control. And beyond that, we've got the Manor Hall. Now, the Manor Hall was leased to the school for term time as their school hall. But in the evenings and weekends, it becomes a letting facility. And I'm just going to show you how Sally talked about antiquated and Mims talked about antiquated systems. This is my key to the Manor Hall. So what do you think of that? It just weighs quite a little bit, but that's my visual aid for the morning. Okay, so to get on to this, so the first little grant that I applied for was a very local one. It was a legacy left I think about 30 years ago, of a large sum of money which has been wisely invested, and every year 3 different villages around this area are allowed to apply for a small grant. So I started off with that because I felt quite confident. It was just a very, very short form and it was easy to fill in. And I've been successful. And I thought, this is great, this is easy. So then in 2020, and I know Sally's from Somerset as well, so she might remember this, there became an opportunity from Somerset County Council to apply for a climate emergency fund grant, and that they'd set aside £1 million. And I remember talking to some people in the cluster at the time, some other clerks, and thinking and saying, what are you going to apply for? Oh, no, it'll be fixed. You know, it'll be all the large town councils that get that money. It's not worth us little ones having a go. So I came back and I thought, no, be positive. Let's start somewhere. So I started to put together all the aims and the dreams of the parish councillors and also the community groups. And we looked at the sports pavilion and we thought, well, hang on a minute, we are doing really well. There's a new cricket club coming in there. They've got a youth side, and their dream was to get the largest youth side in Somerset. What are they going to need? Well, first of all, they needed an artificial cricket strip, because we're very proud of our cricket field. It's also the village green. And, you know, with the children, they probably play cricket a little bit like I would. They were scuffing all the ground. The groundsman was getting upset. So an artificial strip would be the first thing. The only thing was it cost £10,000, which we didn't have. The cricket club didn't have, nor the sports club. So I looked around in all the local funds for that. And then the climate change fund came up. So at the same time, I applied for 2 things. I applied for £35,000 from the climate change fund, which would provide a new heating system, a new eco lights, new eco double glazing, and new doors for the sports pavilion, because it is very, very drafty in there. Then I looked at, well, if we're applying for that, what can I do for the Manor Hall? So already from the Nuttall Trust, which is a small trust I told you about, I managed to get a grant of £3,000, which was quite a large amount from them. And we'd installed more efficient heating. And as you know from that key, there are only certain heaters you can put in a hall that is listed. And they had to replace the ones that were right high up in the ceiling because there's wooden paneling around it. So it was a very specific way of doing it, but it's certainly cut down on costs and was more eco-friendly. So from the climate change fund, I thought, well, let's have a go then at now getting lighting that's more efficient, because we were losing bookings in the evening because the lighting was dim. We couldn't have the Art Society in there. They would complain. So we got new lighting. That was one of my things that I applied for. So applied for it, and just before I take you through how, you know, the ways that I went about writing these proposals, since I started in 2020, I got the £35,000 from the Climate Change Fund awarded, the £3,000 for the lighting in the Manor Hall, £8,000 for the cricket strip, We've had another £7,000 just given to us, because I noticed that the RLT3 system was ending in December. So I snuck in right in November and said, oh, hang on a minute, I know I've just had £8,000 2 years ago, but can I have a bid for this one, please? Because we need to culvert the ditch in order to increase the size of the changing rooms, because the cricket strip has now meant that we have got the largest team of young cricketers coming in. So I went in, and it was a Zoom call like this one, and I had to speak to a committee, and I asked for £4,000 towards the culverting of the ditch, and because they said, you know, they obviously recognised that I was very passionate about my community, they did award the £4,000, but they gave me everything else in the pot as well, because it had to be spent by the end of December. So go for it, just keep going for it, and you will get there. I've had £2,500 awarded for the play area, £3,000 for recyclable benches, again for climate change sort of thing, but from a different fund, £2,500 for our community shop, and in total, if I get the one that I've got in at the moment for a bid for another speed indicator device, I reckon it comes to about £72,000, which isn't a bad haul for a small parish council. So how did I do it? Well, you can see I don't mind talking to people, but writing things down is a little bit more difficult sometimes. So I've written a few notes, because I say I'm not a very technical person to show you all the slides. So when you start thinking about a grant proposal, think of it as being an act of imagination. I mean, I think of it as being a little bit like fiction writing, a bit like some of my CiLCA assignments, actually, because sometimes you have to think that I haven't got all of those things in my small parish. So if I had got all these divergent groups, this is what I do. So basically, before you start writing your grant proposal, you need to think about what you actually want and develop a specific, meaningful, actionable plan, and then consider how your plan will achieve these positive results. Then locate your granting organisation or source up funds projects like this. And I did notice as well, and I have used before, that on the Scribe information, they've got the UK Grant Finders Guide, which is free to download. And I think they've also got some other information on that. I will go through it if in the questions other places that I use, but yeah, do look for that funding guide. It's really good. So research the organisation that is providing the grant and make sure that its mission aligns with your plan, and review their proposal guidelines. And then when you've done all of this, you're ready to start drafting your proposal. So ask yourself, who are the audience? Think about the people offering who are going to read your proposal. What are their mission and goals? What are their values? And how much do their readers know about what you're interested in? And then let your answers to those questions inform how you present your plan. So when you consider your audience, you should think about the kinds of information these readers will find to be the most persuasive. Is it numbers? If so, make sure that you provide that data. Is it testimonials, recommendations? In the case of the Manor Hall, historical precedents. So if I was going for a grant from, say, one of the listed building societies, then I would go with all, you know, I'd show them that key, and I'd make sure they knew that, you know, we have got windows that's hundreds of years old and all that sort of thing. And then think about what your particular expectations are for this grant. So use your research skills, which all of us clerks have got, to pay attention to everything that the granting body is requiring, and then make sure that your proposal can adhere exactly to the requirements. So if you receive any advice from anyone, other clerks, and oh no, you can't do that, ignore that, just get on with it, and do it in your particular way. As Sally just said, be yourself. So write, even if it is a bit airy-fairy, write as you find it from the heart. I can assure you it does work. But you have to also establish your credibility. And how do you do that? Well, you can have to show them that you know what you're talking about, you're knowledgeable, you're forward thinking. So everything that you do when you're writing your proposal, think about, you know, what are they going to ask for? They're going to need quotations. You don't have to get all of those quotations yourself. You can use your counsellor's expertise, or even the sports club committee. You know, I said to them, okay, you want this, this and this. I'm prepared to write this for you. You go out there and get me those quotes, because I haven't got the time within my 12, it's now 14 hours a week to do that. And they did. They came back with me, which was brilliant. So I had the time to spend on writing the proposals. Be as clear and logically as logic as you can, and make sure that it's into predictable sections and label them with clear headings. Sometimes the proposal forms are already laid out for you, which is much more simple, but sometimes you have to make sure that you put it into different categories. So grant proposals are often organised in distinct sections. You might have an overview, an examination of a need. So why is your project important? And yeah, as I said before, make sure that you include as much financial information as possible, and also take on board that a lot of the grants that I've managed to get only provide 80% of the total amount. So look at where you're going to bridge that gap of 20%. So then within your proposal, you need to describe your project and put lots of realistic benefits of what's going to happen. So for example, all those things I wanted for the sports club, my vision as part of the community, not just as Clerk, was to open a warm space and to have a community cafe. And yeah, we've now got one. We've got a cafe. And when I had the climate change sign off which is a councillor coming round on Friday to have a look round, I am proud to be able to take her into that cafe for refreshments afterwards. It's not for profit, but it is a business, and it employs local young people, and we've got a manager there, but it's working really well. We opened us one day, and then because we had all the modern technology and the heating and now the windows were secure, we've now opening 6 days a week. It's a brilliant little project. Think about the budget. Think about your budget. Again, do be careful that you can't always apply for the whole amount, so you will need to provide justification for how you're going to find that other amount. I've already mentioned about using others to find the quotes. That's important. We can't do everything ourselves. And then finally, if you are going to write a lot of proposals for the same thing, because you're not going to be successful every time, just make sure that you carefully go back to the beginning and look at what this particular organisation is looking for, because you can scavenge parts of one proposal for another, but it's not advisable in my experience to use the exact same proposal twice. Additionally, when you're applying to more than one source at the same time, be sure to think about the kind of support you're asking from each organisation. And sometimes you can say to them, well, actually, I have applied to another, but if you could give me 50% and you could give me 50%, because your ideals are this and your ideals are that, it can work. That can work as well. And don't let size be daunting. Go for the small grants, go for anything. I've gone for grants from £100 to obviously the £35,000. The other thing is stay positive, don't give up, and just keep on writing. But one thing to remember is if you do receive a grant, your writing's not over, because most grants then require progress reports and updates. But again, you can use others to help you formulate those. I hope that's been of some help. There are a couple of other things that I use to look at quite a lot. So in Somerset, we've got Spark Somerset, which has got a funding portal. There's the Rural Bulletin, which you can sign up to by email, and that has a monthly funding digest. The one on Scribe, the UK grant funders, and there are hundreds more, the National Lottery and all of those. But good luck, and yeah, happy funding. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Sally. That's really good. I mean, the impact you've had on your village is amazing. Can you turn on your webcams, everybody, and just show appreciation to Mims, Sally and Sally for their great talks, and just clap there. Really good. Really appreciate that. Awesome talks. So we have 5 minutes. I've actually got a hard stop at 12. But yeah, fire off to, yes, any questions, feel free to put your hand up and ask them. I'll call you on. Any questions? There must be some questions. Any tips? Otherwise, I'll ask a quick question. Oh, Anne, fire away. You're on mute, Anne.
Okay, thank you very much to all of you. This has been really great. I'm actually a councillor, but I sit on the HR committee and also on the finance and resources. Everything that you've said, all three of you today, resonates so much, particularly the fact that people have been set in their ways. I have to admit that I nearly gave up as a councillor because it was so difficult. Our new clerk is absolutely fantastic, and she also is in it. And together, I kept saying to her, look, if we don't fight this, if we don't sort of put things forward, who is going to do it? Who's going to look after the village? And I think that the main things I want to point out, yes, definitely getting a government email. As soon as I became a councillor, I got myself an email that was a Gmail one that I used. And apparently I was criticised by some people saying, who does she think she is getting an email? What's she doing? But we need to protect ourselves. So moving to a government email is really important. The meetings together, that is so important to get to know your councillors and for us to get to know what people do, because lots of people have no idea. This word clerk, everybody thinks still secretary, whatever, and yet it's CEO. It's so important. So I think getting together, as soon as I became a councillor, I went to a pop-up cafe in the village, and we have literally no facilities in our village where we are. And again, I was criticised for that, but I started talking to the residents, and now we have a here to hear where we meet as councillors and other people, and we've even been able to get those who aren't on email to fill in surveys that we've wanted to do. So I think that is really important. And I think the third thing that I just want to comment on, and it was really great, I'm just so thrilled with how much money you've actually been able to raise. We've lost our grant. Partly a grant that was being put forward was because they didn't have the proper project managers. It was something that was already in place when I became a councillor, and it was a waste of money. And actually, we have in effect lost £80,000 of council money through it being mismanaged and not having somebody on the council who was able to keep an eye on the project managers, even though everything else was done properly. This whole thing about time is what is really important. And so I want to say thank you to all the clerks. It's really important being able to work together. That's why we're doing it. I'm a busy person, like lots of other people are as well. But I think that being open and transparent is really what is important. And I was criticised for that as well. We started off this last May with 15 councillors, where we've lost some, thankfully. And I'm going to say that thankfully, because again, this is it. If they're not going to move on and do what is happening, it's not going to help the village. And really, the last thing is at village level, it should not be party political. It is all to do with what is the benefit for our village. So that's my 2 pence worth. Okay, thank you.
Excellent 2 pence worth there, Anne. Really appreciate that. I've got a duck out, so I'm gonna hand over to my colleague Joe, which will see you out. So Q&A can happen after 12 if we continue. Before I duck out again, as such a good feel good factor after this webinar. You've really done an excellent job, Sally and Mims. You know, it is what we wanted. So if anyone, when I send my email later, if anyone wants to talk at a future Clerks in Action webinar, please respond to my email and volunteer yourself forward. Really be appreciative to share some of your learnings, some of your wins, and any advice. You may think that you don't have any, but you will. There'll be something in there that is worth sharing. Even if you're a new clerk, brand new, that would be Great. Yeah, so I'm going to duck out, but I'm going to hand over to Andrea. She's got a question, I believe. So I'll unmute. I'll ask you to unmute yourself there, Andrea. I don't. Yeah, you're not unmuted yet. There you go.
Oh.
Otherwise, see you all.
Okay.
I've got a meeting now, so take it easy. Have a really good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say thank you for the presentations, but also to say that having meetings with the councillors as a group, as a social meeting, I found quite difficult because we're a small town in Milton Keynes, so part of a larger city, and so our councillors, for the most part, are not elderly. They're working and they're in full-time work, and I'm not really quite sure that many of them understood the commitment. And in fact, we're a few councillors short because a number of them didn't attend meetings for 6 months. So whilst I think a social arrangement is really important, you can't always get the people there, and don't be disappointed. I mean, I think it's worth keeping going, but don't expect full attendance.
I
That's great.
agree. It definitely, we didn't get all of ours attend, and those councillors that didn't actually attend when we did our brainstorming sessions, they in fact ended up leaving the council because of other commitments that they couldn't do. And it doesn't always work for everybody, just because just trying to pinpoint a night down to get everybody together is like herding kittens. It's just really impossible. But even if you split it up into 2 groups, all we can do is, as we do with all of our roles, is to just keep trying new things to see if maybe that's the one thing that will make a difference.
Yeah, exactly. Well done. Is there any further questions at all from anybody today? Unmute yourself if you'd like to ask a question, or put it in the chat. Oh, well, I'd like to say thank you again to Sally and Mims. Honestly, today's information has been brilliant. I'm a clerk myself, and I've learned from all of you, because as with training, like any training that we do, I think we always learn something new every time. So well done. And I think this has had a lovely feel to it today, this session. So I hope everybody else has enjoyed it. And John will send out the Q&A session and the recording of this later as well to you all. So thank you for coming. Thank you again to our speakers. And I hope you've all had a nice session.
Thank you.
Thanks then. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.